All right, you sick fucks, strap yourselves in, because today we're going deep into the shitstorm that was Donald Trump's first term.
Shitstorm might be putting it lightly.
Yeah, no shit. We're talking Supreme Court madness, Twitter wars that would make your grandma blush, and enough alternative facts to bury a goddamn rhinoceros. So grab your drinks, fire up a blunt if that's how you roll, and let's get this dumpster fire roaring.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, let's cut the crap and get right to it. 2020, anyone. Remember when Trump lost the election and basically turned into a giant orange toddler throwing a tantrum?
Oh, I remember. The dude just could not handle losing. He cooked up this insane story about a stolen election, shoving baseless claims of voter fraud down everyone's throats. And his supporters, they ate that shit up. They even stormed the Capitol on January 6th, trying to stop the election results from being certified.
Yeah, that whole Capitol riot thing was fucked up on so many levels. I mean, come on, people. Breaking into the fucking Capitol building. Seriously.
It was a straight-up attack on democracy, an attempted coup, and let's not forget the fake electors scheme, which was some seriously shady shit.
Fake electors? What the hell is that?
Basically, Trump's team tried to submit these bogus slates of electors from key states, hoping to swing the Electoral College in his favor. They even had memos outlining this strategy, written by some of Trump's own legal advisors.
So they were trying to rig the system. What a bunch of scumbags.
It was a pretty blatant attempt to subvert the will of the people.
Speaking of legal eagles, let's talk about the Supreme Court. Trump managed to shove 3 justices onto the court in just 4 years. 3. How the hell did he pull that off?
It was a strategic move, a long game to reshape the court for decades to come. And it worked. He appointed Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, remember the sexual assault allegations during his confirmation hearings? That was a shit show. And then Amy Coney Barrett, who filled Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat right before the election. Talk about a power play.
Yeah, that Kavanaugh hearing was like watching a train wreck in slow motion.
Yeah.
Sweating like a pig, denying everything. It was surreal. But let's be real, these appointments have massive implications for everything, right? I mean, abortion rights, gun control, the whole 9 yards.
Absolutely. The balance of the court shifted dramatically, giving conservatives a solid majority. And we've already seen the fallout. The overturning of Roe v. Wade is just the beginning. There will be more legal battles to come, more rights eroded. Trump basically weaponized the Supreme Court to push his agenda, and the effects will be felt for generations.
It's like he planted a time bomb in the heart of American democracy.
In a way, he did.
All right, let's move on to something a little less heavy. Trump's Twitter feed. It was like a car crash. He couldn't look away from entertaining as hell, but also terrifying. Remember when he'd attacked judges who ruled against him or called the media the enemy of the people? What a fucking lunatic.
Trump's use of Twitter was unprecedented. He bypassed traditional media and went straight to the people, spewing misinformation, attacking anyone who dared to criticize him. It was propaganda at its finest, but it also had real-world consequences. It fueled division and hate, even incited violence.
Yeah, his tweets were like throwing gasoline on a fire. And then, of course, Twitter finally had enough and permanently banned his ass after the Capitol riot. About fucking time.
That was a controversial move, with some claiming censorship, but Twitter argued that Trump's tweets were a clear and present danger, a risk of inciting further violence.
Well, they weren't wrong. Okay, let's get down to brass tacks. The Russia investigation.
Yeah.
This shit was like a goddamn spy thriller. Investigations, hearings, the whole witch hunt narrative pushed by Trump and his cronies. What the hell actually happened?
The investigation was launched to look into Russian interference in the 2016 election and whether the Trump campaign was involved. Robert Mueller, a former FBI director, was appointed as special counsel to lead the investigation.
And what did Mueller find? Did Trump collude with the Russians to win the election or not?
The Mueller report concluded that Russia did interfere in the election, but it didn't find sufficient evidence to establish a criminal conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia. However, it did outline 10 instances of potential obstruction of justice by Trump, but ultimately didn't recommend charges.
Wait, so he might have obstructed justice but got away with it? What a load of bullshit.
Mueller left it up to Congress to decide whether to pursue obstruction of justice charges, and they did, impeaching Trump for the first time.
Hold the phone. He got impeached. What for?
It focused on Trump pressuring Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden, his political rival, during that infamous phone call where he asked the Ukrainian president to do us a favor. The House argued that this was abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. They impeached him, but the Senate, controlled by Republicans, acquitted him.
Of course they did. It's like the Republicans were so blinded by their loyalty to Trump that they couldn't see the blatant corruption right in front of their faces.
It was a highly partisan process, and ultimately, Trump remained in office.
Classic Trump. Slithering out of trouble yet again. So he dodged the impeachment bullet, but the whole thing reeked of corruption.
It certainly cast a long shadow over his presidency. But let's not forget there were plenty of other controversies during his time in office.
Oh, we're just getting started. We haven't even scratched the surface of the Trumpian shit show. But we'll save that for later.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, Trump's presidency was a wild ride, that's for sure.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of the batshit crazy stuff. But was there anything at all that Trump did right during his time in office? Or was it a complete and utter shit show from start to finish? Give me something here.
Well, like with most things, it depends on who you ask. His supporters would say his tax cuts were a win for the economy, at least in the short term. They also point to his appointment of conservative judges.
Right, the tax cuts. Who actually benefited from those? Was it just another handout to the rich assholes, or did regular people actually see any of that cash?
The tax cuts mostly helped corporations and wealthy individuals. There's a lot of debate about whether it helped the economy overall.
Figures. So much for draining the swamp. All right, enough about the economy. Let's talk foreign policy. Did Trump make America great again on the world stage, or did he just piss everyone off?
It was a mixed bag, to say the least.
Yeah.
Often unpredictable, driven by his America First agenda. He definitely alienated some allies with his aggressive rhetoric and those protectionist trade policies. Remember all those tariffs he slapped on goods from China, Mexico, even the European Union?
Yeah, he basically started trade wars with everyone. What a fucking genius. Did any of that actually work?
Some argue his tough stance forced other countries to renegotiate trade deals, but others argue it just hurt the U.S. economy and damaged relationships with key allies. It's still being debated.
Okay, so he pissed off our friends. What about our enemies? Did he handle those relationships any better?
His approach to adversaries was unorthodox, to say the least. He talked directly with Kim Jong-un, which was unheard of. And he brokered some Middle East peace deals, but his overall strategy was often criticized as incoherent and impulsive.
Hold up, he was buddies with Kim Jong-un. Wasn't he calling him Rocket Man like a year before that?
Yeah, it was a strange dynamic. He went from threatening to totally destroy North Korea to exchanging what were basically love letters with Kim Jong-un. Nobody knew what he would do next.
Okay, so the dude was all over the place. What about his relationship with Russia? That whole thing was shady as hell from the start.
Yeah, Trump's relationship with Russia was constantly being scrutinized. The Mueller investigation, as we discussed earlier, found that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help Trump.
So Russia helped him get elected. That's some serious shit.
Yeah, the report concluded that Russia engaged in a systematic effort to influence the election, but they didn't find enough to prove a criminal conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russian government.
So they interfered. But Trump's team wasn't directly involved. And that seems hard to believe.
The report couldn't say for sure one way or another, and that's what fueled all the speculation and conspiracy theories. Trump denied any wrongdoing, of course. He called the whole thing a witch hunt, which he repeated over and over.
It's also goddamn shady.
Yeah.
But Trump always seemed to slither his way out of trouble.
He was a master of distraction. Every time a scandal popped up, he'd create another controversy to take the heat off.
Okay, enough about Russia. Let's get back to some of the other crazy shit Trump pulled. We talked about the family separations at the border and his mishandling of the pandemic, which were both colossal fuck-ups. What about his stance on climate change? Did he ever even admit that it's a real problem?
Not really, no. He called climate change a hoax, pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement, rolled back a bunch of environmental regulations. It was like he was trying to destroy the planet on purpose.
So he was a climate denier. What a fucking idiot. What was he thinking?
His actions were pretty consistent with his worldview, which seemed to always prioritize short-term economic gains over long-term sustainability.
So basically, he was willing to sacrifice the planet for a quick buck. That's so fucked up.
His policies were a huge hit with the fossil fuel industry, but scientists and environmental groups were not fans, to put it mildly.
Well, that's depressing as hell. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, from the Supreme Court to Twitter wars to the Russia investigation and more. What's the final verdict? Was Trump a complete and utter disaster or just a really, really bad president?
It really depends on who you ask. His supporters point to his economic policies, his conservative judges, and his unconventional foreign policy as wins. His critics say his divisive rhetoric, his mishandling of the pandemic, and his attacks on democracy far outweighed any perceived accomplishments.
Yeah, it's pretty clear the dude left a mark on American politics, whether you love him or hate him.
Absolutely. His presidency was a major turning point in American history. It brought all these deep divisions in society to the surface and raised some serious questions about the future of American democracy.
Okay, I think we've all had enough Trump for one day. Let's take a quick break and come back to wrap this whole thing up. We'll try to figure out what it all means for the future. Okay, we're back. So we spent like an hour ripping apart the flaming wreckage of Trump's presidency. Now for the big question. What the fuck does it all mean? Was it just a weird-ass fever dream in American history? Or is this shit gonna happen again? Is our democracy as strong as we think it is?
That's the question, isn't it? Trump's rise to power exposed some deep, nasty cracks in American society. Political polarization, economic anxiety, racial tensions, you name it. And those haven't magically disappeared just because he's gone.
So you're saying there's a chance we could see another Trump-like figure slithered out of the swamp and take over? That's a pretty fucking scary thought.
It's definitely possible. All the things that helped Trump get elected people, not trusting institutions, wanting a strongman leader, believing in alternative facts, that's all still around.
Alternative facts. What the hell's that even supposed to mean? It's just bullshit dressed up in a fancy suit,
Right,
right?
like creating your own reality, even if it has nothing to do with the truth. And it's everywhere these days, especially in politics.
So we're basically living in a world where everyone's just making shit up as they go along. That's depressing as fuck.
It's definitely a worrying trend. It makes it almost impossible to have real conversations about important issues when everyone's stuck in their own little bubbles, only listening to things they already agree with.
Yeah, good luck solving climate change or fixing the economy when half the country thinks it's all some big conspiracy or the hoax made up by the other side. So what can we do about it? How do we stop another Trump from happening?
It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer. I think the first step is admitting there's a problem and being willing to have some uncomfortable conversations about what's really going on in our country. We need to start trusting our institutions again, teach people how to think critically and spot bullshit, and figure out how to bridge the gap between all these different sides.
That all sounds great, but how the hell do we actually make that happen?
It's a long, hard road, and it takes everyone working together. We need to support organizations that get people involved in their communities, fact check all the misinformation flying around, call out bullshit when we see it, and talk to people who see things differently than we do, even when it's fucking hard.
Sounds like a lot of work. But I guess the alternative is another 4 years of chaos and division, which nobody wants.
Exactly. We've seen what happens when a guy like Trump gets power. We can't let that happen again.
Well, that's some food for thought. So, to all you listeners out there, wake the fuck up and get involved. Vote, volunteer, donate to organizations fighting for democracy and truth, speak up when you see injustice, whatever you gotta do. Don't let the assholes win.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We've covered a lot today. Stay informed, keep asking questions, and never stop fighting for a better future.
And remember, this is just one take on a crazy time in American history. Do your own research, form your own opinions, and don't be a sheep. Peace out.